bummer to start a segment this way, but we wanted to pay our respects collectively to Jason Jenkins and his family. Jason was the senior vice president over at the Miami Dolphins, had been in the market, had climbed within the organization over the course of several years. And you could see from all the tributes, both on the Dolphins broadcast and Mike McDaniel's words after the game, and from a lot of people that worked in the media, how truly loved Jason was, immensely respected, an incredibly kind man at a position where you don't run into that often. It's a weird dynamic sometimes with media folks and media relations people, and someone being kind in that position can really go a long way. I know for me personally, a lot of my friends in the industry share this experience in getting to know Jason and working with him. He was especially kind to people just making their way in the business, people that were unsure of themselves, people that weren't very confident, could be easily intimidated. And usually, as you climb, you'll run into people that may use that against you. Jason was extra kind to those young ones that were just trying to find their way, and he was a guiding hand. And he passed away tragically over the weekend, right before the Dolphins game, and it hit everybody like a ton of bricks. Chris, I know you have known Jason for quite some time too, and you know him pretty well. You're the one that actually delivered the news to me, and like all the wind left my body once I heard that devastating news, because he was just so immensely respected and so incredibly kind, and just so young. This is a very tragic thing that we're dealing with down here locally.
Yeah, and in some ways, I sort of feel bad in a weird way for people that heard this immense outpouring, because they're like, I imagine they want to feel something like everyone in this very public sphere does as well, but he's just one of those people behind the scenes that no fan would ever deal with. And yeah, maybe you felt a certain kind of way about how the Dolphins have been in the community, and you might have seen his face in pictures, but most people don't have an experience with this man. But everyone who did, and like you said, it's incredibly startling for a PR person to be this level of popular, because they kind of always have to be the bad guy. They have to be the bad guy that tells you that your interview request was denied, or the coach doesn't want to reveal this information and all that. And PR people can sometimes be very unpopular as a result. But he just completely overwhelmed it with kindness. And you mentioned the stories of people getting into the industry and not having known a lot. And I was very much in that same sphere. When I was starting in local radio in Miami, I went to go cover the Dolphins, because that's one of the jobs that kind of lower level employees do. You go and get sound and all that. And I remember it as being around the time that he took over full-time as head of the PR department. There was this guy, I believe his name is Harvey Green, who ran that department for decades when Don Shula was in charge, all the way through until the mid-2010s. And when I started covering the team was around the time that he took over. And he made me feel like I was important as the columnist for the Miami Herald, or local TV reporters, or national reporters. Recently, Jessica and I had an experience with him where we were covering the Miami Grand Prix, and I kind of reached out to the Dolphins because they're running the event, and he made me feel as important as international broadcasters that were going to be involved with the event. It was just, he was such a nice man, and I don't think it can be underestimated for everyone that dealt with him, like how difficult this was to process. Because it was funny, I talked to you, and you were like, I was just talking with him. I talked to somebody else, and he was like, I was just talking to him. Everyone had just spoken to Jason Jenkins, because he was that level of nice and communicative, and we all dealt with him. And it's so bizarre that the next time I go to a Dolphins thing or another Grand Prix that you don't see his smiling face. He was so kind. Give me a hug. He's the only person that every time I see him, he hugs me. And it was so hard. And I imagine it was hard, like, if you're a Dolphins fan watching the post-game press conference, you're like, why is Mike McDaniel about to break down talking about this person I've never heard of in the Dolphins organization? But it's because he meant so much to so many people.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo the same stuff. Like, the way he treated me the few times that I was there alone, and he walked me around the first time for like 25 minutes. Like, the way he could get an intern to do that for me, but it was just like it was just so incredibly nice, and it was just terrible, man.
Yeah, he was the person that we worked through over at the Dolphins, and he was always that person for me. They had different regimes in place that had varying media policies, and he was here for pretty much all the ones. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy to get media access during the Parcells years, but he would always get back to you and explain exactly what was going on. And it's so commonplace. You don't bat an eye at someone just ghosting you at that position. If it wasn't no, If there was something that made waves over there, he'd talk it out through you. He'd talk it out with you, and you'd get better as a result of it. He wanted everybody to be on top of it. He understood that everybody had a job to do, and he didn't want to stand in the way of that. And if he couldn't necessarily give you the access, he could give you an answer. And it was no surprise that he would climb throughout that organization and lead community affairs. And look, the Dolphins franchise, they've had a lot of negative headlines recently. Especially, remember, the seeds of the Kaepernick story kind of started down here. He made sure that he got out in the community, and the Dolphins were very, very active, and he championed so many causes, both with equality on the racial side, actually getting out there in the community. He would put his hands in the dirt, to use a football cliche, and he would lead the front lines, and he was an absolute rock star for that organization. It was no surprise that he touched Mike McDaniel's life in that way, so in such a brief tenure, because he was the point person, and he was a point person for what became one of the biggest athletic complexes on the planet. If I had an F1 question, he was the kind of guy that if something happened to a credential or I needed anything, we were out there shooting for tennis when the tennis was in town, and I would always work through Jason Jenkins because I knew he had my best interests at heart, and he was the guy to go to there. And he was so spectacular at his job, but I should say he was spectacular at being a person. He was incredibly
just kind, right?
The kindest individual you'd ever want to meet at a position, like I said, that you don't necessarily. It really sticks out because it's tough. You're the gatekeeper for so many folks, and he went over and above just the call of duty of being a human. He was that caring, that loving, that respected, and it's truly, my heart breaks so much for his family. He was such a young man, 47 years old. And he had 3 kids, and he leaves a wife as well. And my heart absolutely breaks for what she's going through, but also my heart breaks for his coworkers over at the Miami Dolphins organization and it's a tight-knit fraternity of just media people that would deal with him, but also media relations folks from other franchises in the market, and they all had the same great things to say about Jason Jenkins, and it's just a truly devastating, tragic loss. Hard to make sense of it. Right now, we're all kind of looking for answers, and you wonder how someone so good can just be taken away like that with no real reason behind it at the moment. We're all struggling for answers. I know we're going to plan on probably going to the service, and I really hope that I don't know if there's news items out there or articles. I know that some local media people have been posting their own interactions over the years with Jason Jenkins, and take a moment to look up on that to give you some insight on just how fundamentally decent this person was, how he was using his position of power in that Dolphins organization to not just make individuals better, but also the community better. He spearheaded so many of their charitable efforts, and they were better for him being there. And we're really sad as a show. We're really heartbroken individually. He was a good friend to all of us. I'd consider him a friend. Anybody that kind of met him would, off the bat, feel like they were friends with him. And that was the kind of guy that we're talking about here in Jason Jenkins. And I once again, would like to send our thoughts and prayers over to his family that have been left behind. There's just a gaping hole over there in that organization. And this is going to take quite a while for everybody to kind of feel their way through this one, because he was that good a person. So rest in peace to Jason Jenkins. We admire you. We respect you. You were a great friend to all of us. And we're